My SIL demanded my 8-year-old adopted daughter dye her red hair brown for wedding photos, and my brother supported her. Then planned to erase her from family events because she's not blood related. I, 35 female, never imagined I'd be in this situation, reaching out to strangers on the internet for advice, but here I am. My brother Billy, 38 male, is getting married to Natalie, 36 female, in 3 months, and what should be a happy family celebration has turned into a nightmare that's threatening to tear our family apart. I need perspective on whether I'm overreacting or if I'm justified in protecting my daughter. I have an adopted daughter, Kiara, 8 female, who came into my life when she was just 6 months old. Her biological mother, Rachel, was my best friend since middle school. We grew up together, shared every secret, and supported each other through everything. Rachel got pregnant young, and the father disappeared as soon as he found out. I stood by her throughout her pregnancy, went to every doctor's appointment, and was there in the delivery room when Kiara was born. When Kiara was 6 months old, Rachel was driving home from work when a drunk driver ran a red light and hit her car. She didn't survive the crash. It destroyed me to lose my best friend, but I knew I had to step up for Kiara. Rachel had already named me as Kiara's guardian in her will, knowing her own parents were elderly and unable to care for a baby. I officially adopted Kiara when she turned 1, and she's been my daughter in every way that matters since then. Kiara inherited her mother's striking red hair, a shade so vibrant and beautiful that strangers often stop us to compliment it. It's long now, reaching down to her waist, and she's been growing it out since she was 4. The length of her hair has become a source of pride for her, and it helps her feel connected to Rachel. I have photos of her mother with the same long red hair, and Kiara loves looking at them while I tell her stories about Rachel. Billy has been a constant presence in Kiara's life since day 1. He was there when I brought her home after Rachel's funeral, helped me set up her nursery, and even learned how to change diapers and prepare bottles. When my husband David passed away 3 years ago from a sudden heart attack, Billy stepped up even more. He would come over several times a week, bring dinner, help Kiara with her homework, and make sure we were doing okay. Kiara absolutely adores her Uncle Billy. He's been more like a father figure to her than just an uncle. When Billy announced his engagement to Natalie last year, Kiara was over the moon. She had met Natalie a few times during their dating period, and while Natalie wasn't particularly warm toward Kiara, she wasn't unkind either. Billy seemed happy, so we were happy for him. I noticed Natalie was a bit of a perfectionist who liked to control every detail of her life, but I never imagined it would affect us the way it has. Everything changed 2 months ago when Natalie asked Kiara to be their flower girl. Kiara was beyond excited. She spent hours looking at flower girl dresses online and practicing walking down the aisle with her stuffed animals. Natalie seemed pleased with Kiara's enthusiasm, but looking back, I should have noticed the calculating look in her eyes during those early planning discussions. Last week, during our regular Sunday family dinner at my parents' house, Natalie dropped her first bombshell. While we were all sitting around the table, she casually mentioned that she had scheduled an appointment at her salon for Kiara to get her hair dyed brown. At first, I thought I must have misheard her. When I asked her to clarify, Natalie pulled out her phone and started showing everyone photos from her salon's Instagram page of different shades of brown hair. She had already paid a deposit and booked a specific stylist who she said specialized in children's hair coloring. Natalie explained, with this condescending smile, that she wanted all the young girls in the wedding party to have matching brown hair because it would look better in the photos and fit her chosen color scheme. She had created an entire mood board on Pinterest showing her vision for the perfect wedding party, and apparently, Kiara's natural red hair didn't fit into that vision. I immediately refused, telling her there was absolutely no way I was letting anyone dye my 8-year-old daughter's hair. The very suggestion was ridiculous. Kiara is a child, not an accessory to be styled for photos. The look on Natalie's face when I refused was something I'll never forget. It was like she couldn't comprehend someone saying no to her. Natalie's carefully maintained composure cracked. She started arguing that this was her special day, her one chance to have the perfect wedding she'd always dreamed of. She pulled up more photos on her phone, showing elaborate mood boards she created where all the children had matching brown hair. She'd even gone so far as to Photoshop some of our family photos to show how Kiara would look with brown hair. What happened next hurt more than Natalie's demands. Billy, my brother who had helped me raise Kiara, who had been there for every important moment in her life, sided with Natalie. He pulled me into the kitchen, away from everyone else, and told me I was being difficult and uncooperative. The way he spoke to me was like I was being unreasonable for protecting my daughter. Then Billy said something that made my blood run cold. He reminded me that Natalie had graciously included Kiara in the wedding party even though she had initially wanted only her own nieces. The implication was clear: Kiara wasn't really family in Natalie's eyes, and we should be grateful for whatever scraps of inclusion she was willing to offer. This was the same brother who had once punched a guy at a family barbecue for suggesting Kiara wasn't his real niece because she was adopted. The brother who had spent countless hours teaching Kiara to ride a bike, who came to every school play and dance recital, was now acting like we should be thankful for being included at all. The situation deteriorated further over the next few days. Natalie started showing up at Kiara's school during lunch breaks, armed with her phone full of pictures of little girls with brown hair. She would sit with Kiara and point out how pretty these other girls looked, suggesting that Kiara would look just as beautiful if she changed her hair color. She even brought fashion magazines featuring child models with brown hair, circling their photos and leaving them where Kiara could find them. Kiara came home from school last Tuesday in tears. She asked me if there was something wrong with her red hair, if it made her look ugly or different from other girls. This is my daughter who used to proudly tell people she had princess hair, who beamed every time someone compared her to her mother. Now she was standing in front of her mirror, trying to hide her red hair under a hat, all because Natalie had made her feel like there was something wrong with her natural appearance. That night, I found Kiara attempting to use brown markers to color her hair in the bathroom. When I asked her why, she broke down crying, saying she just wanted Uncle Billy to still love her and Aunt Natalie to think she was pretty enough for the wedding. My heart shattered seeing my confident, happy child reduced to this state of insecurity and self-doubt. I tried to reason with Billy privately, reminding him how he used to braid Kiara's hair when she was younger and how he always said she looked just like her mother, my late best friend. But he dismissed my concerns, saying I was being oversensitive and that it was just hair that would eventually grow back. Natalie has been texting me constantly, sending me photos of children with brown hair and suggesting different shades that would look good on Kiara. She even offered to pay for monthly touch-ups until the wedding photos are done. When I continued to refuse, she started telling family members that I was being uncooperative and trying to ruin her perfect wedding. What's really bothering me is how Billy has changed since getting engaged to Natalie. He used to be Kiara's favorite uncle, always bringing her small gifts and taking her to the park. Now he barely acknowledges her unless Natalie is around, and even then, it's only to criticize something about her appearance that doesn't fit Natalie's wedding aesthetic. I'm at my wit's end. My parents think I should stand my ground and not let anyone alter Kiara's appearance. Billy's friends have been messaging me, saying I should just give in to keep the peace since it's just temporary. Natalie's latest text suggested that if I don't agree to the hair dyeing, maybe Kiara shouldn't be in the wedding party at all, as she doesn't want any elements that might distract from her vision of a perfect wedding. Kiara keeps asking me if Uncle Billy is mad at her and why Aunt Natalie doesn't like her hair. I don't know how to explain this situation to an 8-year-old who just wants to be part of her uncle's special day. I'm considering pulling Kiara out of the wedding party to protect her from all this drama, but I know it would break her heart. Update 1. The situation has gotten so much worse than I could have imagined. After my last post, I tried to keep things civil with Natalie and Billy for Kiara's sake. I even agreed to attend the bridal party events, thinking that perhaps I had been too quick to assume the worst. That turned out to be a massive mistake. Last Saturday morning, while Kiara and I were having our weekly pancake breakfast, I received a text from Natalie. She had scheduled a dress fitting for all the girls in the wedding party at an upscale boutique downtown. The appointment was in an hour. When I texted back saying it was too short notice, Natalie replied that she had actually sent the details to everyone else 2 weeks ago and must have forgotten to include me. She added that rescheduling would be impossible as she had paid a non-refundable deposit for the entire group. I should have trusted my gut and declined, but Kiara had been so excited about being a flower girl that I couldn't bear to disappoint her. We rushed to get ready and made it to the boutique just as everyone else was arriving. Natalie's mother Linda was there, along with 3 bridesmaids and 2 other flower girls, Natalie's nieces who were both around Kiara's age. The red flag started appearing immediately. When we walked in, I noticed all the other girls, including the bridesmaids, had brown hair in varying shades. It was clear Natalie had already coordinated this with the other families. Linda kept making pointed comments about how nice it was that everyone looked so coordinated, while staring directly at Kiara's red hair. The seamstress began taking measurements, starting with Natalie's nieces. They were given beautiful dresses in a soft pink color that complemented their brown hair perfectly. When it was Kiara's turn, Natalie suddenly produced a different dress, this one in a much darker shade that she claimed would prevent Kiara's hair from clashing with the wedding colors. While the seamstress was pinning the dress, Natalie disappeared into the back room with Linda. They returned moments later, Natalie clutching a pair of professional hair scissors. Without any warning or discussion, she announced that since Kiara wouldn't agree to dye her hair, they would at least need to cut it to match the other flower girls, who all had shoulder-length hair. Kiara, who had been quietly enduring the endless comments about her hair color, finally broke down. She burst into tears at the sight of the scissors, clutching her long red hair protectively. The seamstress, bless her heart, immediately stepped between Natalie and Kiara, saying she needed to adjust some pins. That's when Linda, Natalie's mother, showed her true colors. She began berating Kiara, calling her an attention-seeking brat who was trying to ruin her daughter's special day. Her voice got louder and louder as she went on about how real little girls don't cry over haircuts and that Kiara was being manipulative. She even suggested that Kiara was acting out because she missed her real mother, twisting the knife even deeper into an already painful wound. The other flower girls were staring, wide-eyed and uncomfortable. One of Natalie's nieces actually started crying too, but Linda quickly shushed her, saying she was just copying Kiara for attention. The seamstress tried to intervene, suggesting everyone take a break, but Linda was on a roll. She turned her attention to me next, launching into a tirade about my parenting. According to Linda, this kind of behavior was exactly why adopted children often turned out problematic. They lacked proper guidance from real parents. She went on to say that if Rachel had lived, she would have raised Kiara to be more accommodating and less selfish. Through all of this, Billy stood in the corner, scrolling through his phone as if nothing was happening. My brother, who used to be the first person to defend Kiara against any slight, real or perceived, couldn't even look up from his screen while his fiancée and future mother-in-law verbally attacked his niece. When I caught his eye, silently begging him to step in, he just shrugged and muttered something about everyone being stressed about wedding planning. I'd had enough. I helped Kiara out of the dress, not caring about the pins falling to the floor. As I gathered our things, Natalie positioned herself in front of the boutique's door. She started saying that we couldn't leave yet, that Kiara was making a scene over nothing, and that we needed to finish the fitting. When Kiara tried to squeeze past her to get to me, Natalie actually grabbed her arm to stop her. The sight of Natalie's hand on my daughter's arm made something snap inside me. I moved forward, my voice deadly calm, and told Natalie that if she ever laid a hand on my daughter again, I would make sure there wouldn't be a wedding to worry about. Linda gasped dramatically at this perceived threat, while Billy finally looked up from his phone, wearing an expression of shocked disapproval, at me, not at Natalie. The boutique owner, who had been watching everything unfold, finally stepped in. She firmly asked Natalie, Linda, and their group to leave, stating that she wouldn't tolerate any child being harassed in her store. As we walked to our car, we could hear Linda loudly proclaiming that she knew this would happen when Billy's family insisted on including adopted children in the wedding party. That evening, Billy called. I thought maybe he had finally come to his senses and was calling to apologize. Instead, he suggested that maybe Kiara was too emotionally immature to handle being in the wedding party. He said Natalie was just trying to make everything perfect, and Kiara's meltdown at the boutique had embarrassed everyone. When I brought up how Natalie had tried to force a haircut on Kiara without permission, he accused me of twisting things around and said Natalie was just trying to help Kiara fit in better with the other girls. I hung up on him and blocked his number. Within hours, Natalie was posting on social media about how some people don't understand the stress brides are under and how sad she is that certain family members are trying to make her wedding about themselves. She even posted a long status about how blessed she was to have such understanding and cooperative nieces, obviously excluding Kiara from that category. Several of Billy's friends have been messaging me, saying I'm being too harsh and that I should apologize to Natalie for causing a scene at the boutique. Some suggested that I'm just jealous because I'm a widow and seeing Billy happy with Natalie is difficult for me. None of them seem to care about how this is affecting Kiara. Kiara hasn't stopped asking why her Uncle Billy doesn't love her anymore. She overheard Linda's comments about adopted children and now has questions about whether she's a real part of the family. She asked me last night if her mom, Rachel, would have made her cut her hair if she was still alive. I'm trying my best to reassure her, but the damage has already been done. I've started looking for a child psychologist who specializes in adoption trauma, hoping to help Kiara process all of this. Update 2. Just when I thought this situation couldn't get any worse, I discovered something that shattered any remaining hope I had about salvaging our family relationships. My college friend Amy, 34F, who is one of Natalie's bridesmaids, came to my house late last night. She was visibly upset and kept apologizing for not coming to me sooner. Amy showed me screenshots from a private group chat that Natalie had created for the wedding party. The messages went back months, long before the dress-fitting incident, and reading through them made me physically sick. Natalie had been systematically planning to exclude Kiara from the beginning, all while pretending to be gracious about including her in the wedding party. In these messages, Natalie had laid out detailed instructions about how Kiara was to be kept out of most family photos. She had created an extensive shot list for the photographer, specifying that Kiara should only be included in a few large group photos, and even then, she was to be positioned on the edges so the photos could be easily cropped later. Natalie wrote that she wanted to ensure her wedding album wouldn't be dominated by that attention-grabbing red hair. But it went beyond just the wedding photos. Natalie had shared her plans for gradually phasing Kiara out of family events altogether. She wrote about how she didn't want an adopted child with such striking features overshadowing her future children at family gatherings. She had already decided that Kiara wouldn't be included in their holiday celebrations, starting with Thanksgiving this year. Her reasoning was that it would be easier to establish these boundaries early in their marriage rather than trying to change things later. The most devastating part was seeing Billy's involvement in these discussions. Natalie had been forwarding him some of these plans, testing the waters to see how he would react. His responses made me question everything I thought I knew about my brother. Not only did he not object to Natalie's plans, but he actually supported them. In one message, he suggested that it might be better for Kiara in the long run to not be so involved in their lives, saying it would help her understand the difference between biological and adopted family members. This was the same brother who had spent years being Kiara's father figure, who had sworn to our parents before they passed that he would always protect both of us. I found myself going through old photos on my phone, pictures of Billy teaching Kiara to ride a bike, helping her with science projects, attending her school plays. How could he change so completely? Amy explained that she had been struggling with whether to show me these messages for weeks. The final straw for her came when Natalie started discussing plans for their future children. Natalie had written about not wanting Kiara around their kids because it might confuse them about what makes a real family. She even suggested that Kiara's red hair might make people question if her future children were really Billy's, since red hair didn't run in our family. With shaking hands, I forwarded the screenshots to our extended family members. My Aunt Susan, 70F, who had been like a grandmother to Kiara since we lost our parents, was particularly devastated. She had been planning to host the rehearsal dinner at her home, but after seeing the messages, she immediately called Billy to confront him. Billy's response was infuriating. He tried to downplay everything, saying I was taking Natalie's words out of context and that she was just stressed about wedding planning. He claimed that Natalie had a right to control who appeared in her wedding photos and how her future family events would be structured. When Aunt Susan reminded him of all the times he had promised to protect Kiara, he dismissed those promises as things said before he understood what having his own family would mean. Natalie, realizing that Amy had exposed her true colors to the family, launched into damage control mode. She sent out a long message to the entire family, full of crocodile tears and excuses. According to her, the messages were taken out of context, and she was just venting about wedding stress. She tried to paint Amy as a jealous troublemaker who had manipulated the screenshots because she was bitter about not being chosen as maid of honor. But Natalie's attempts at damage control backfired spectacularly. In her rush to discredit Amy, she accidentally sent screenshots of her own to the family group chat, messages that showed her mocking Kiara's attachment to her red hair and planning ways to make future family events uncomfortable enough that we would stop attending on our own. She quickly deleted the messages, but not before several family members had taken their own screenshots. The fallout has been massive. Almost all of Billy's cousins have declined their wedding invitations. Aunt Susan canceled the rehearsal dinner and publicly announced on social media that she could not in good conscience celebrate a union that would bring such cruelty into our family. Even Natalie's own bridesmaids have started dropping out, uncomfortable with being associated with someone who would deliberately hurt a child. Through all of this, Kiara remains blissfully unaware of the deeper plot against her. She knows only that she won't be in the wedding anymore, and honestly, she seems relieved. Last night, she asked me if she could grow her hair even longer, like Rapunzel, and I saw a glimpse of my confident little girl returning. Whatever happens with Billy and Natalie's wedding, I know I made the right choice in protecting my daughter from their toxicity. Update 3. Final update on this situation: the wedding has been called off, but not because of anything I did. Natalie managed to destroy everything all by herself. The way it happened was almost poetic justice, though it brings me no joy to see my brother finally face the reality of who he was planning to marry. Last week, Billy stopped by Natalie's house unexpectedly. They had been arguing about the wedding budget. Apparently, Natalie had gone over budget by several $1,000s on her dress alterations after multiple bridesmaids dropped out and demanded their contributions back. Billy had brought flowers as a peace offering, thinking he could smooth things over. When he arrived, Natalie's front door was slightly ajar. He could hear her on the phone in the kitchen, speaking to her mother Linda. Instead of making his presence known, Billy stood there listening as Natalie laid out her entire plan for after the wedding. She was gleefully telling Linda how she had already started making arrangements to exclude Kiara from all future family gatherings. Natalie's plan was more calculated than any of us had imagined. She had already contacted their future school district to ensure Kiara wouldn't be enrolled in the same school as her future children. She had made lists of which family friends needed to be told not to invite us to any events where her family would be present. She even laughed about how she planned to tell Billy that having an adopted niece around might confuse their own kids about family dynamics and make them question why they didn't look like their cousin. The most damning part was when Natalie started bragging about how easy it had been to manipulate Billy. She told Linda that Billy was so desperate to have a perfect family that he would believe anything she said. She mocked him for being gullible enough to choose her over his own niece, saying she knew exactly which buttons to push to make him distance himself from us. Billy finally saw Natalie for who she really was. He walked into the kitchen, dropped the flowers on the counter, and ended their engagement on the spot. Natalie tried to backtrack, claiming she was just venting to her mother, but Billy had heard enough. He told her he would never choose anyone over his family again, but it was too little, too late as far as I was concerned. Later that evening, Billy showed up at our door. He was crying, something I hadn't seen him do since our parents' funeral. He tried to apologize, saying he had been blind and stupid, that he had let Natalie manipulate him into betraying the people he loved most. He begged to see Kiara, promising he would spend the rest of his life making it up to her. I didn't let him in. Instead, I showed him a video on my phone, a recording of Kiara's last dance recital that he had missed because Natalie had planned a wedding tasting the same day. In the video, Kiara kept looking at the empty seat Billy usually sat in. After her performance, she had asked me if Uncle Billy hated her dancing now. I told Billy that this was just one of countless moments he had missed, one of countless times he had let Kiara down because Natalie's wishes came first. Billy broke down completely on our porch. He said he understood now why Natalie had pushed so hard to control the wedding photos. She had been planning to erase Kiara from their lives from the very beginning. He admitted that he had ignored all the red flags because he was so focused on having what he thought would be a perfect family. But some betrayals can't be undone with just an apology. Kiara and I are moving forward with our lives. We've started new traditions: Sunday brunches with Aunt Susan, monthly movie nights with my college friends and their kids, and weekly art classes where Kiara can express herself freely. Her confidence is slowly returning, and her red hair is more vibrant than ever. Billy still sends messages every few weeks, asking to see Kiara. Sometimes he leaves voicemails about how much he misses us, how sorry he is, and how he wishes he could turn back time. I delete them all without responding. Kiara hasn't asked about him in weeks. She's too busy with her new friends from art class and planning her next dance recital. Last weekend, we ran into Natalie at the grocery store. She had the audacity to approach us, probably hoping to do more damage control now that the wedding was off. Before she could speak, Kiara looked her straight in the eye and said, "My hair is perfect just the way it is," and then walked away. I followed my daughter without saying a word, proud of how far she's come. Some of Billy's friends still tell me I'm being too harsh, that family should forgive each other. But I learned something important through all this: sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. Kiara and I have built a new support system of people who love us exactly as we are, red hair and all.